it, now! Watch it, get up the back bar. Up the back bar. Go.
The Javelin anti-tank weapon, which has arrived in Ukraine in large numbers from the US and NATO allies, has been a large element attack for the Ukrainian army. All available information suggests that the destruction of Russian tanks has continued at a rapid and even alarming pace. Although hard facts are difficult to confirm in such a fluid situation, it appears the supply of anti-tank weapons to Ukraine has caused significant damage to the Russian advance. Numerous videos of the targeted missiles being shot at Russian armor have appeared on social media. Even more pictures of destroyed tanks have circulated around the internet. Russia has the largest number of tanks in the world, although many of these are fairly old Soviet models. Ukraine claims to have destroyed dozens of heavy vehicles, tanks, armored fighting vehicles, infantry fighting vehicles, and armored personnel carriers since the start of the fighting. In this video, you can see how the Ukrainian javelin destroyed the enemy's defenses and pushed back the Russian troops. A column of Russian tanks and armored combat vehicles was methodically obliterated by Ukraine Marines armed with portable missile launchers in the Donetsk region. It shows at least 7 Russian armored personnel carriers and tanks traveling single file through a desolate landscape riddled with craters from rocket shells and dotted with homes that had been reduced to piles of rubble. What the Russians didn't realize was that they were driving straight into an ambush led by members of Ukraine's 36th Separate Marine Brigade lying in wait all around the perimeter. In the clip, Kiev's troops brandishing US-supplied surface-to-air Javelin missile launchers on their shoulders wasted no time unleashing hell on the enemy vehicles, prompting them to break formation and scatter. But the evasive maneuvers prove futile, as the anti-tank missiles strike their moving targets one by one, causing them to burst into flames. In one instance, a missile hits a fleeing Russian tank, sending plumes of thick smoke into the sky. Another Russian tank narrowly escapes a direct hit and attempts to fight back by firing on the Ukrainians' positions, but a second Javelin missile quickly finds its way to it. Later, one of the smoldering Russian combat vehicles explodes into a huge fireball, sending chunks of debris raining down on the grim surroundings. The action in the field is intercut with shots of Ukrainian Marines taking part in the assault, with one seen flashing a V for victory sign. The way Marine javelin throwers are burning Russian armored vehicles in the Donetsk region is a real art. Javelin anti-tank missile system fighters of the Ukrainian National Guard also destroy T-72 tanks and infantry fighting vehicles of the Russian troops, and Russian T-64 tanks were disabled. The video consists of 2 parts. The first was taken from the ATGM operator's monitor. The second part was filmed by an unmanned aerial vehicle and shows a direct hit on a tank and the ensuing heavy fire. Another footage has emerged showing what appears to be fleeing Russian troops being struck by their own anti-tank guided missile that had fallen into Ukrainian hands. In the footage, Kiev forces operating the Ukrainian-made Stuna P anti-tank guided missile system are watching on a monitor how their comrades turn a Russian Kornet missile system against the enemy. These scenes have been recorded by Ukrainian military drones over the past 2 weeks around the town of Vuhledar in Donetsk, eastern Ukraine, where successive Russian assaults have failed. The Vuhledar debacle suggests chronic failures in the command and tactics of the Russians as they gear up for a spring offensive. If replicated elsewhere on the long military front in Donetsk and Luhansk, such failings could jeopardize the Kremlin's plans to seize more territory. Some videos of geolocation show basic tactical blunders in an area that's open and flat, where Ukrainian spotters on higher ground can direct artillery strikes, and where minefields are worsening Russian casualties. One footage shows a tank crashing into a minefield and exploding, followed almost unnoticed by an infantry fighting vehicle that suffers the same fate. Other footage shows Ukrainian drones dropping small explosives on static tanks in open areas and abandoned armor graves. At least 24 Russian tanks and infantry vehicles have been disabled or destroyed in a matter of days, according to videos released by the Ukrainian military and analyzed by military experts. drone footage shows an intensive barrage along the tree line where Russian tanks are trying to advance. The Ukrainian artillery not only caused heavy losses to the advancing units, but also attacked the Russian rear, cutting off supply lines and possible withdrawal routes for the Russian troops. If the Russian armed forces try to disperse, they will shoot each other, because they do not understand who is in front of them. However, some Ukrainian units have been running short of munitions as the tempo of Russian operations has increased. Analysts say the challenge for the Ukrainians is to resupply frontline units with shells and anti-tank missiles fast enough. Russian troops continue to have a distinct advantage in firepower. They launch a barrage of thermobaric missiles, a reminder that they are more capable of causing devastation than capturing territory. The paratroopers of the 79th Separate Air Assault Brigade continued to hold the defensive lines near Donetsk, their positions coming under daily attack. To repel paratroopers, the enemy often used tank armored vehicles, infantry fighting vehicles, and armored personnel carriers. This time, the Russians threw a tank along with infantry to storm the Ukrainian troops' positions. This footage shows the combat work of Ukrainian anti-tank gunners, who scored a direct hit on a Russian combat vehicle with an anti-tank missile. It shows the tank ablaze after the anti-tank missile hit, Russian troops milling about behind it, and further explosions, likely from artillery. A missile can be seen racing through the air before it plunges into one of the tanks, which erupts into a ball of flames. At one point another missile hits another tank and desperate Russian soldiers are seen fleeing from the burning wreckage. The footage shows Russian tanks driving through a destroyed village before a Ukrainian soldier fires a javelin missile at the column of military vehicles. Towards the end of the video, with the tank fully ablaze, there is a second, large explosion, probably the tank's own ammunition detonating. The paratroopers said they were successful in forcing the enemy to retreat. The javelin missile has been an integral part of Ukraine's arsenal since the war began, as it is able to target Russian tanks effectively by flying from a height and slamming down on the target from above. The missile, part of a series of weapons sent to Ukraine by Western countries such as the US and UK, is particularly deadly against tanks because their armor is thinnest on top. Elsewhere on the front line, Ukraine said Russian forces pressed on with their assault in the east. In particular on Bakhmut and nearby towns, as well as on the town of Avdiivka, about 37 miles to the southwest of Bakhmut. Bakhmut has been the site of the bloodiest infantry battle in Europe since World War II, with Russian forces seeking their first victory since mid-2022.